Hey guys, in this video I'm gonna talk about my memories in the Netherlands. I'm gonna get some support from AI to voice my dictation and also for some visual support. And without further ado, let's continue. Let me briefly talk about
The
the
origins
origins
of
of
these
these
memories.
memories.
I originally started this series of travel memories 4 years ago in the spring of 2021 during my stay in the Netherlands, where I planned to live for about 5 or 6 months for my first Erasmus Plus student mobility project. Before that, I had already lived in several cities, Lviv, Kiev, and Belgrade, each time creating a private WhatsApp or Telegram group to record my noteworthy experiences, voice notes, and photos. Those groups became my personal archives, full of scattered but vivid memories. When I started a new journey in the Netherlands, I realized that the amount of material had grown too large to handle from my previous travels, so I decided to begin a weekly video series for my Netherlands travel, leaving the previously collected data to handle later. Amsterdam would be the place where I continued this habit as a kind of structured video memory project. So, the original source of this Netherlands series you're listening to on this channel was made in Turkish back in those times. It lasted about a year as a 10 video long series, a total of 8 hours long, me personally vlogging. I later privatized all those videos because they contained a lot of personal content that was not suitable for today's internet. And now I'm redoing that series here on this channel in a more conscious manner with my current point of view. So, let me talk about a bit why I preferred Netherlands for my Erasmus plus student mobility project. I was trying to make a choice between England, Germany, and the Netherlands with a paper in my hand containing a list of pros and cons for each. Later on, I learned that weed was legal in the Netherlands. The moment I learned it, the decision was made. Back in those times, I believed that I should experience every type of thing, from social experiences to various substances, so that my horizon in life would expand. I was so obsessed with that idea that not only the types of experiences were important, I was looking for different levels of categorically the same experiences. And when I think about it now, it was definitely not a wise idea. I had an unhealthy curiosity that eventually did not end very enjoyably for me there. I mean, it could have ended much worse, of course. Anyways, I'll talk about the details later, but in the end, I'm full of gratitude that I'm still in one piece both physically and mentally, even after operating my body with such a mentality for a long time. So I made my decision, got acceptance from the partner university in the Netherlands, made all the plans, and got in the airplane. The flight from Istanbul to Amsterdam was smooth for the most part, except for a few moments of turbulence. I had imagined the turbulence would be terrifying, or at least thrilling. If we were to die there, I hoped for an exciting death, but it turned out to be quite an ordinary experience. Even boring, I could say. Perhaps I had seen too many dramatic scenes in movies. The flight attendants warned everyone to stay in their seats, comforted us by telling us that it was a matter of minutes before things would return to normal and all that stuff. I just sat and looked out the window, thinking about what was awaiting me in the Netherlands. On the plane, I sat next to a Turkish woman in her 60s. Later, I learned that she was a 30 years long immigrant who settled in the Netherlands after her husband found a job in the country. She had lived in Rotterdam for decades, but spoke neither English nor Dutch. At one point, she needed help filling out a form where we were supposed to swear that we did not have COVID. So I helped her. She was so grateful that she shared half of her sandwich and a small bag of chickpeas with me, leblebi as we call it. It was such a small but cute and innocent gesture that stayed with me. When she found out I was a student, she smiled warmly and said, "Then you must eat. Get stronger." That small exchange somehow made the flight feel homely, a little pocket of kindness in the middle of the sky. Anyways, I landed on Amsterdam. My main destination was Maastricht. That's where my university was. But before going to Maastricht, I spent a couple of weeks in Amsterdam. When I arrived in Amsterdam, I stayed in a hostel that completely surprised me. It wasn't like the small family-run or apartment-based hostels I had stayed in before. This one occupied a massive building, more like a factory for travelers. Everything worked with industrial precision. Digital check-ins, automatic lockers, and spotless facilities. It was the most professional hostel I had ever seen. I couldn't help comparing it to the small places I'd stayed in during my earlier travels. It felt as if Amsterdam itself, organized, systematic, efficient, had built this hostel as a miniature reflection of its city planning. Then I started to walk around the city. What struck me immediately about Amsterdam was the absolute dominance of bicycles. They were everywhere, thousands of them, and cars were almost invisible in the city center. Most of the bikes had no gears, which I later learned was because the whole city is almost perfectly flat, so there's no need for gears. I also discovered that bicycle theft was a serious issue to the point that entire companies existed to rent, insure, and repair bikes on a subscription basis. It was like an entire economy built around two wheels. There was a river between my hostel and the city center. Thanks to it, I discovered fascinating ferry system of Amsterdam quite early. It was incredibly simple, had very short scheduled distances. Small ferries constantly moved across the water, connecting the city center to the northern side where my hostel was located, and they were free. It was literally a bridge between the two parts of the city made by ferries. Another surprise was how international the city felt. Even in residential areas, I would hear groups of people speaking English to each other, not tourists, but residents from all over the world. It gave Amsterdam a feeling of openness and cosmopolitan ease. I realized that this was one of the few non-English speaking countries where you could live your daily life entirely in English and still feel completely integrated. The old center of Amsterdam felt like a perfectly preserved 17th century town. Narrow canals, curved bridges, and sweet, old buildings leaning slightly toward each other. Everything looked like a painting that had come to life. People walked, cycled, and talked quietly in the streets. The air itself seemed peaceful. Around the core, however, the city transformed into a modern network of infrastructure and high buildings. It was like stepping from a museum straight into the future. Something that truly fascinated me was the openness of people's homes in the center. On the ground floors, many living rooms had huge windows facing the street, and people sat there reading or eating dinner, completely visible from outside. No curtains, no blinds. It felt like watching scenes from The Truman Show, except real. I couldn't decide whether it was cultural confidence, architectural tradition, or simply trust. It was both unsettling and beautiful, the idea that a city could exist in such transparent harmony with itself. One afternoon, I wandered into the red light district and noticed to my surprise that one of the city's largest churches stood right beside it, along with an erotic museum, and there was a dirty public toilet next to the church. It felt almost shocking. I couldn't help wondering what kind of cultural evolution led to this kind of spatial coexistence. I asked a nearby local about her thoughts on the situation. Her answer was even more shocking. She told me that it was normal and actually there was a public toilet for men, but not for women. She believed that there should be one next to it for women. LOL. The approaches to the situation were amazingly different. Looking back from now, I guess it was about Protestantism in Western Europe. I did not see anything like that in Catholic countries. Another time, when I asked this to another person, he justified the situation by saying that public toilets were there because the state tried to prevent people from peeing on the wall of the church. It made sense. And actually, it also made me realize that states do not put public toilets to serve their people. States do not give a shit about it. Their main concern is to keep the streets clean from men who are able to pee whenever they need. There are no public toilets there because women cannot do such a thing biologically as easily as men do, so there is no worry for them. Since beginning of my arrival, I saw that XXX symbol everywhere in Amsterdam. At first, I thought that it was something related to adult entertainment or something. Later, I learned that the symbol was the official flag of Amsterdam. Later, I realized that most Dutch cities had their own flags too, each proudly displayed. It made me think about Istanbul, my home city, and its own municipal flag that I had never paid attention to. And yes, in Turkey, we do have flags for cities. It was a good example of realizing your own situation by experiencing a similar one in another country, something that stands out precisely because you're not accustomed to it. After some time in Amsterdam, it was time to depart for Maastricht. At that point, I already had a plan to come back to Amsterdam after I completed paperwork in Maastricht. That was because the university in Maastricht too was online at that time. That plan slightly changed when I met fellow exchange students there, but eventually I later came back to Amsterdam.
For now,
there
there was a train I needed to catch to get my residence permit first, because, they didn't give weed without a residence permit. Anyways, this was the first part of the Netherlands series. I spent a lot of time in that country. After Amsterdam, I'm gonna go to Maastricht, then come back to Amsterdam again, and blah blah. But for now, cheers. Oh, by the way, I just forgot. I'm gonna put photos as usual at the end of the video. I mean, to be honest, as an amateur photographer, the most enjoyable captures I did was in the country of Netherlands. I mean, it was like pure. It was a country like came out from the heaven, like nature-wise, architecture-wise. It was amazing, photogenically. So at the end of each videos about the Netherlands, I plan to put like 30-ish photos. Let's see. Again, cheers, bye-bye.